Okay, so what's up guys? Today I'm going to be giving you a little tutorial of replacing the vforce3 reed valves onto your 2012 yz250. Okay, so the reason I'm replacing these reeds into the bike is not because the current reeds are worn or broken, but I've heard great things about these vforce3 reeds, about the bottom end and the mid-range having a bit more oomph to it. So that's the reason I will be replacing them today. Okay, so there's two ways to replace the reed valves on these YZs. First way is you can remove the carburetor sitting here because the reed is this one right here. But I'm taking a bit of a different approach today because I already cleaned the carb. Everything with the carb is fine and I don't want to remove it again. So I'll be taking out the subframe, or rather just lifting the subframe. Firstly by removing this bolt here. Then there's another bolt here on the side. Then you'll also need to remove this bolt holding your seat in, as well as this bolt right here and another one down here. Okay, so after removing these couple of bolts, you can now remove your seat and as well as remove this plastic here on the side. Okay, next you want to remove these two bolts. This one holding in the exhaust right here. Yours would probably be something different. And then this Allen bolt right here at the bottom. This loosens the exhaust from your subframe. Okay, so after removing the bolts for the exhaust, you can start by removing this clamp. It should be a Allen clamp for you guys. I replaced it because mine broke, as well as this one right here. After removing those, you can just give it a bit of a tug here on the airbox as well as on the subframe, and it should just pop out like that. That gives you a lot more space to work with. As you guys can see, the carb is still pretty clean. Okay, so what you can do now is make sure that your fuel line is off. Then you can start removing your fuel line right here. Okay, so after removing your fuel line, you can now start by just giving the alternator a bit of a tug and removing it just to the side a bit. After removing your carburetor, you can remove these four bolts here. There's one here, and two as well on the other side. This will make you able to remove your original reed valves. Okay, so after removing the 5 bolts, sorry, it's 5 not 4, so these 3 on the bottom and then the 2 on top, you can remove the boot, and then here's your reed valve. Just make sure to put in the new valve the same way you take out the old valve, and also check your gaskets to make sure they are fine. Okay, so with the new valve, you're firstly going to put in the spacer, then the valve, and on top of the front spacer, you're going to put the gasket. Just make sure that the gasket is not torn or broken in any way. And lastly, before you start tightening down the reed valve, just remember the boot. When you start tightening down the valve, I like to use one bolt, just basically as a pilot, to pilot through all of the spacers, the gasket and everything, just to make sure that you don't pinch the gasket, and make sure that your gasket is correctly in its position. After catching one bolt, just take a second pilot bolt, also thread it through the spacer, the valve and the gasket. After you got everything in place, just after fitting the 2 bolts, you can now just make sure that everything is aligned up properly and you didn't pinch the gasket and it's not sticking out and not in its correct place. You can now start by adding the rest of your bolts, and with these bolts, don't tighten them too harshly. I would say tighten it against and just a little bit, because they don't have a lot of tension on them, and they break quite easily. And removing these bolts inside there is a horror story. After tightening everything down, you can start by firstly fitting back the carburetor. After fitting the carburetor into its place, you can now start by lowering your subframe again. Just be aware of the exhaust so you don't damage the exhaust, and also this plate here, just make sure it doesn't hook on the tire. Now you can start by pulling it down back into its original place again. After you get it back into its original place, just make sure to loosen this clamp enough, and then also press your airbox over the carburetor, and then you tighten down these two clamps again. After tightening down all the clamps, you can start by putting back this subframe bolt, as well as this subframe bolt, and as well as tightening back the exhaust. After tightening down your exhaust, you can end with putting back this plastic, fitting these two bolts here, and also this bolt here after fitting the seat. So you can basically assemble the bike completely now, and then we'll try to start. Okay, so now that everything has been assembled again, the fuel line is open again, everything is back in order, I'm just going to be replacing the spark plug because the bike has been standing for almost a year now since it's last started. So I want to give it all the chances it has to start now. Okay, now let's see if she'll start. Okay, so if you found this informative and helpful, like and subscribe would greatly help. Next video we're going to be fitting these two new brake discs as well as changing our gearbox oil. So tune in next time to see that.